Oh, I was intrigued to play this character, Leo Beebe, for multiple reasons. Primarily because I really am fascinated by our director's work. I think the guy's extraordinary. And then the story, obviously, you have Christian Bale and Matt Damon, and you have world class actors telling just a terrific, uh, wildly entertaining, like strange slice of American history. And then you have this character Leo Beebe, who I play, who was a fascinating central figure within the drama and the villainry, in a way, of what happens within the story of the decision to basically take these three Ford cars across the finish line at the exact same time, and how all the dynamics that got them to that final moment, basically. And I just thought the character was, um, a terrific conflict in a sense. He was a terrific, what's it called, anti-hero in a way, through all of the different scenes. It takes a very rare director who has the ability to be at this point in his career to pull off a movie like this. And I feel like, obviously, Jim was sort of given this story at this point in his career where he, I feel, is on fire right now as a creative filmmaker. And to tackle something this, I keep saying it's like the Lawrence of Arabia of car driving. I think the thing I was really took away from it is more the idea of about men at a certain point in their lives, a certain point in their lives as friends, a certain point in their lives and in their careers, in their corporate careers, and in reinventing themselves, or in terms of the period of time where they decide they don't want to play the game anymore, and all these different things that are all sort of colliding together in the storytelling and in the actual experience, the true story of happened here, and these strange, powerful men in these huge corporate elements with Ford and Ferrari and these sort of big egos that were involved. Henry Ford, Enzo Ferrari, Ken Miles, Shelby, all these different people, and this character Leo Beebe, who has that same level of, in Lee Iacocca, John Bernthal's amazing character, all these men sort of colliding in their power and egos at the point in their life where they are either exactly who they are for the rest of their life, or they're making big changes. I found it fascinating. I love this job in so many ways. I love this particular job because when you get to work with people who you feel are your matinee idols in a way. Even if you get to work with people who technically are your equals in a way, you've grown up together. I didn't know Matt at all. I just know his work, and I'm a huge fan of his work. I think people are going to really love watching Christian in this movie because he's got this sort of loose, very strange, sort of just original take on the character that is really fun to watch. He's got a kind of comedic looseness to him that we oftentimes don't get to see Christian play, which takes me back to what I did with him with American Psycho, where he had that too, even though the character is so, obviously savagely intense. But Christian is a world class, if not one of the great actors of all time, and you see it when you play with him, and he also happens to be a terrific guy, so it's kind of rare. What I see on a daily basis is this ultra obsession to detail that's really quite remarkable, even to the point where we had one of the, I thought, the most fascinating days I've ever had in my career, where it was the Ford plant, or the Ford factory, and they had built this entire factory of Ford for one single day of shooting this extraordinary scene. And Jim was behind the camera, and he was very agitated about what one of the extras was doing deep in the background. And the director of photography asked him, "Why are you even looking at that?" And Jim said, "I don't look at the face. I am a doctor. I look at the pancreas." It's built from scratch because almost all of it, you can't just, these places don't exist anymore. That's why I keep saying it's the Lawrence of Arabia of car racing films. There's a massive artistry behind the design of these cars, and the operation of them too. And then what I find fascinating is the dynamics that go into being a race car driver, and the madness of it, and the idea that particularly back then, they were borderline test pilots. This movie is truly about the dynamics of these men and these families and this group of people who all collided together to try and do this. It's obviously a movie that the central idea is about racing, but I think the thing that actually interests me most, and I think that people will take away more from the movie, is the idea of the relationships between these men and between, the families that were involved, the kid, and Noah's wonderful character, and it's just I find that to be what's struck me about this movie. The challenge of the story and the challenge of Ferrari being so um, powerful and consistent in how every race they were winning, and that Ford wasn't even really in the game at that point, and they were starting to be out of the zeitgeist of American thinking in some ways, and the horror that caused in Henry Ford II, and that caused in people like Leo Beebe, and the fact that they truly believed that this company had a much more important place in American history and in America. And so that's really what this fight was about in some ways. Yes, it was about racing, but more it was about its place in history. And I think that's where the movie really also hits a very interesting tone of a company struggling for survival, and an epic company struggling for survival, and a company that felt like it had won the war, a company that felt like it had truly been involved in the building of America at its most idealistic, at its most powerful time after the war, and the technology that's going into building cars at that point too, and the changes. It's just it's a very deep part of American history, actually. I'm not much of a car guy, but I walked onto this set today and I was like, I want that car. For the first time in my life, I was like, that car in particular, I like want to figure out, is that something, it struck me. The beauty of these cars is really interesting, and also makes me be like, why are we not making cars that look like that anymore? My hope is this is a rare, cinematic, very exciting evening of just amazing entertainment, truly. I mean, that's really what it is. And it also happens to be historical, and I think it's going to have some really fantastic acting and just some epic, sort of rare, old school filmmaking and the scope of it.